Hi, I'm Steve Maskery. There are times when I need a bit of doweling. It might be a spindle for something, or I might be making a rack or a rail. I can buy dowelling at my local timber yard, but there's very little selection of diameters and virtually no choice of material. It's pine or pine. So if I want something in cherry or in oak, I can't buy it. Fortunately, it's quite straightforward to make dowel in the home workshop, and it can be any material that I want, and within reason, any length and any diameter as well. All I need is a router table and an electric drill. Now the secret to getting this jig working well is accuracy in making the holes. The holes have to be the right size and a good quality finish on them. If the holes are too big, we're going to get vibration and that will give us a poor surface finish. And if they're rough, that will give us friction and a poor surface finish. And the holes have to be in exactly the right position. So the in-feed hole and the out-feed hole must be exactly on the same line. And we've got to position the hole for the cutter so that the cutter can cut exactly the circumference that we really want with a little bit of adjustment. So we start with a very accurately prepared wooden block. Now this is maple, and it's too small to put through the thicknesser and too small to do on the table saw. So it's a good exercise in hand preparation. So where's my face mark? There's my face mark. I've got it at the moment. Now that is just about perfect. I can't see daylight under there at all. And this side, it's not quite there yet. I need to take a little bit off this edge here for about half its width. So that goes in the vise that way round. And I'm going to use my block plane for this because it's in keeping with the size of the wood. And I've got a little oil pad which I use just to keep it riding smoothly. This is my granddad's. This is a Trilby hat that was my granddad's. And when he wore a hat out, he used to cut it into strips, wind it up into a ball, and put it in an old baccy tin. And this must be 50 years, so this is probably older than I am. And it gets a couple of drops of oil a year, and it works as a very nice lubricating pad and somewhere to park my plane. So we'll have a couple of passes with this. So the next stage is to do some accurate marking out, and in the top of my block I want a hole for my dust extraction hose, and in the bottom of the block I want a hole for the cutter. And the hole for the cutter has got to have some clearance around it so that all the chippings have somewhere to go. We want good air throughput through this jig to clear away all the debris. So I'm going to put those holes slap bang in the middle. Now this is 150mm long, that's 6 inches if you're in old money. And so That's my centre line. And I'm going to follow that centre line all the way around the block. Wonder if I've got some lead. That's where it broke. There we go. And if we've done that correctly, they should line up. Absolutely perfect. And I'm going to mark on here what sizes they're going to be. So 35 and then through at 20, I think. There. This one block is going to allow me to produce dowels of two different sizes, and I'm going to produce 6 and a 10mm dowel. So we're going to get 2 by being able to turn this jig round, and the working end is going to be the end that's always towards me. So if I want to produce a 6mm dowel, I've got to take into account the diameter of the cutter, which is going to be 1/2 inch, and the diameter of my dowel, which is going to be 6mm. And I've got to come back from this centre line by half the diameter of the cutter, that's 1/4 inch, plus half the diameter of the dowel, which is 3mm. So if we call that 9.5mm, 9mm and a bit, that's how far I need to come back from here to get the centre line for my in-feed and out-feed holes. And on the other side, when the block is turned around the other way, I want to do the same thing for a 10mm dowel. So I need to come back my 1/4 inch plus 5mm, which is 6, 11.5, say 12mm. So I need to come back 12mm in this direction. So I've set my block up in my drill press nice and firmly. It's up against the stop so it can't slide this way. It's held down here by this banana, and I've installed a 35mm cutter. I'm going to stop when I get about halfway, and then I'm going to swap the drill and go straight through at 20mm, and that way those two holes will be exactly in line with each other. The size of your in-feed hole for your workpiece will depend upon what size dowel you're producing. And because we start off with a square section piece, that needs to be √2 times the diameter of the dowel that you want. Now √2 is 1.414 something or other. So that's near as makes no difference, 1.5. And so for a 6mm dowel, I've drilled a 9mm input hole, in-feed hole, and I'm swapping that now for a 6mm drill without moving the block. I've had to open the jaws of the chuck as wide as they'll go to get that 9mm drill out. And so it's quite easy. It's 1.5 times the size of the dowel that you need. So for 6mm you need a 9mm in-feed hole, and on the other side for a 10mm dowel I'm going to need a 15mm hole. And it's the same if you work in inches as well. For 1/4 inch you'll need 3/8. I can do inches if I have to. And for 3/8 it'll be 15mm. 3/8, that's 6/16, 9/16, okay. Right, we're ready to do this one. Now this block is going to be mounted onto this bracket. It's just 2 bits of MDF with a domino through them. And one end gets clamped to the fence of my router table, and this end gets clamped to the front of the table so it doesn't move. And this is going to be screwed in place from below. Now normally it wouldn't be critical where you put the screws, but I do want to be able to mount this in both orientations. So I want my screws to be exactly the same distance about centre. So I've got my most important tools here, there we go. And with a pair of dividers, I've marked a centre point for the cutter hole, 1 screw hole there, and 1 screw hole there. And then the pilot holes are going to be on the underside. Pilots for the screws need to be that far either side of centre. Just there. So countersinking. And that is just about ready. I've got 2 pieces of wood here to use as my workpiece. I've got a piece of oak, and this is just about perfect actually. This is dimensioned at 10.7, 10.8, which means across the diagonal, which is what's important as it goes in, it's 14.9, 15, just about perfect really. This one isn't perfect, this is a little oversized yet. This is for the 6mm dowel, and that's currently reading 7.23, and that diagonal is only just shy of 10mm, and it's got to go through a 9mm hole. So rather than tweak my planer thicknesser to take off 0.5 millimetre, I'm just going to remove the arises of this, which will reduce the effective diameter. Now I've mounted my block so that the 10mm end is towards me, and I've installed a 1/2 inch straight cutter into my router table, and the height of the cutter has got to come to at least to the top of the exit hole. So that goes over there like that, and is held in place with a clamp at the back. Now this is a bit loose, so I'll put another clamp in there, but I need to adjust the position before I can do that. And I do that by installing a drill bit into the exit hole and pushing it in. Now it's quite easy to cut your fingers on the flutes of these things, so I'll just put a glove on. And I push that in until I can see it down the hole here. And now I've got to adjust my fence so that the router cutter just kisses the drill bit. Now don't forget, you will need to make your workpiece a little bit longer than what you actually want, because you lose the first couple of inches while it's getting settled down in the jig. And you've also got a couple of inches at this end, which are in the chuck of the drill. But the bit in between will be smooth and accurate and absolutely perfect. Although it's easy to make dowels this way, there are things that can go wrong. If you make the dowel just a tad too big, then it's likely to jam in the outfeed hole. And if that happens, it'll just shear off, and that's what's happened here. The solution, of course, is to adjust the jig to make the dowel very slightly smaller so that it slides smoothly. The other thing that can happen is that you can end up with a rough or spiraled surface finish. And this piece of cherry is actually, although it's quite round, it's actually quite textured. And the reason for that is that this is very slightly undersized for the hole. Now this is about 5.8 millimeters, and that means it's a very sloppy fit in that exit hole. And so it can vibrate within the jig. And we've already seen how much this system does vibrate even when it's working well. But if this vibrates within the jig, then you will get a rough finish. So how do we eliminate vibration? Well, it's very difficult to do that, but one way is to make sure that this fills the exit hole, and the other way is to make sure that the end that you sharpen to go into the chuck is as truly cylindrical as you can get it by hand, because we're trying to put what is essentially a square piece of timber into a 3-jaw chuck, so it doesn't fit very centrally, and so this is going to whip as it spins anyway. If you can get it as close as you can to perfect, it will spin truer and you'll get less vibration. You can also try adjusting the feed and the speed of the drill, because that also affects the surface finish. You'll find more great jigs, gadgets and workshop ideas on this set of 6 DVDs from workshopessentials.com. They're packed with ideas for making your woodwork more accurate, faster, safer and even more enjoyable. If you do mortise and tenon joinery, there are a couple of great mortising jigs, and they're simply the best tenon jigs anywhere on the planet. Check out on YouTube for the ultimate bandsaw tenon jig and the ultimate table saw tenon jig. They're simply the best anywhere in the world. Every DVD comes with plans that you can print off and take into the workshop with you. And I also offer an unconditional, no-quibble money-back guarantee. And in 4 years, nobody has taken me up on that, so that you can be sure that your money is being well spent. Why not go to Workshop Essentials today, read the reviews and grab yourself a bargain while you're there. I've got to go now, I've got some dowels to make. But until the next time, enjoy your workshop. Cheerio!